Evening, everybody. How are you? Good. I'm Puleng Lange-Stewart, and I am currently completing my honours degree in theatre making at UCT, while trying to juggle being a new mom, so it's fun. And the poem that I'm going to read to you is a love poem to the problematic black woman, because I love them. So, aggressive, no, she said, undressing her in her sixth tongue, redressing her with the bland understandings of unilingualisms which have never truly acknowledged the five other skins wrapped snugly around her ability to create meaning. Instead, young and black and female and loud, quick time translate into aggression, belying the intricate complexities which weave together the inflections of her Xhosa, intonations of her Pedi, the imperatives of her Shangaan, all squeezed into the eloquence of her English. See, she knows her privilege when she speaks words with none of the long, elongated vowels no one else seems able to say without subconsciously making fun. Aggressive, asked the girl, with long nutty locks and a Biko gospel. No, passionate about those uncomfortable English words, the loud ones, the impolite ones that challenge a status quo which keeps the other five tongues in cages, flicking the one you'll listen to in shapes that conjure up images of an abandoned revolution, the body count of monopolizing social evolutions. Aggressive? No. Angry, she says. And far less than she should be or could be, because look beneath you, you're still standing on the same land. For now, living lives built on stolen time. My mother was a kitchen girl, my father was a garden boy, that's why I'm a socialist. I'm a socialist. My mother was a kitchen girl, my father was a garden boy, that's why I'm a socialist. I'm a socialist, she sings, and come scoff, please, scoff and tisk and click tongues and clutch pearls at the palpable burning rage of today in the wake of a not even slightly bloodless transition still claiming casualties, and the people shall share in the wealth of the land. See, I understand how funny this may seem when it appears outside of a Freedom Charter theme, because the practicalities of equality were never supposed to be quite so extreme. Instead, somewhere, at some point, a few generations down the line, money will drip down into the right hands, having slipped out of enough car windows to enough car guards, because the egalitarian nature of neoliberal capitalism just works that way. And privilege is naturally inclined to give itself up without a fight, and then, yes, young, black, female, be aggressive. Bare your teeth. Be the bane of polite conversation, ruined dinner parties, lecture theatres, and all other spaces built only to tolerate you with the aggressive insertion of yourself. The wholeness of you, the blackness of you, the curve and dip and rage of you as an extending site of struggle. Bang at the gates, make them all bear witness to the wounds so actively unlooked at, brandish them and say, I have not forgotten you, and you shall not forget me, through ignoble attempts to nullify this history. Be aggressive with those uncomfortable words, rage in all those tongues.
Thank you. The second prize winner, Sitembiso Kalishwayo, couldn't be with us tonight, but his piece very much relates to your poem in the sense that it is also about memory. And it is called Forgotten. And he says about his piece, in every revolution, some voices are lost. This is the basis premise of the Forgotten. I will ask Nick, who was one of the judges of the competition, to read us an excerpt from the piece that won the second prize.
On the day of the march to the Union buildings, I received a letter from Mam Nomvula. I could hear her tears beyond the page. I never finished reading that letter. All I know is that on the 20th of October 2015, he took a taxi to Kliptown and shot himself. One bullet to the head. You wouldn't have heard about him, because he wasn't 0708506J. He wasn't white. He wasn't privileged. They still call him Garden Boy. I just miss my friend. Dear 0708506J, I hope this letter finds you. This will be the last letter I send to you, as I'm going away for a while. I'm not sure if I'll ever come back. I'm a human being that feels the way that you do. I feel happy when the sun shines the same way you do. I cry when the rain caresses my face before the storm comes. We bleed the same colors, but our colors are tainted. They are tarnished by the history that we never created. The nightmares have taken control of our dream, so we don't sleep anymore. I'm not angry that you're white. I'm not ashamed that I'm black. I'm just worried about the story we would tell our children. Will it be the same story that our parents told us? I'm not angry that you were told to be white. I'm not ashamed that I was told to be black. Do you remember the dreams we shared together? I and you standing on that stage, hand in hand, realizing that we both had made it. I won't be able to stand on that stage with you anymore. They won't let me. You'll always be my friend. As I take my final sleep, I hope you remember us the way we wished our country could live up to the title of the Rainbow Nation. When the movement ends, please tell them my story next to yours. Your dear friend, Sitembiso Kalishwayo.
The memory of going to the beach every New Year's Eve is one I share with cousins and most people raised black. How the elders would forbid us from going in too deep, to giggle, to splash, in our black tights and ShopRite plastic bags wrapped around our new weaves, forbid us from riding the wave, for fear that we would be a mass of blackness, swept by the tide, and never to return, like litter. The elders forbid us as if the ocean has food poisoning. I often wonder why I feel as if I am drowning every time I look out into the sea. This and feeling incredibly small. And I've often heard this joke about black people being scared of water or not being able to swim. We are mocked, and we have often mocked ourselves for wiping our faces the way that we do when we come out of water. Compare it to how they do it all Baywatch-like, and how we so ratchet-like with our postures and kink. Yes, didn't go to performance school for nothing, right? We are mocked, and we have often mocked ourselves for wiping our faces the way that we do when we come out of water. Compare it to how they do it all Baywatch-like, and how we so ratchet-like with our postures and kink. But every time our skin goes under, it's as if the reeds remember that they were once chains, and the water, restless, wishes that it could spew all the slaves and ships onto shore, whole as they had boarded, sailed, and sunk. Their tears are what have turned the ocean salty. This is why our irises burn every time we go under. Every December 16th, December 24th, December 31st, our skin re-traumatizes the sea. They mock us for not being able to willingly throw ourselves into something that was instrumental in trying to execute our extinction. For you, the ocean is for surfboards, boats, tans, and all the funky stuff you do under there in your bathing suits and goggles. But we have come to be baptized here. We have come to stir the other world here. We have come to connect our living to the dead here. Our respect for water is what you have termed fear. The audacity to trade and murder us over water, then mock us for being scared of it. The audacity to arrive by water and invade us. If this land was really yours, then resurrect the bones of our colonizers and use them as a compass. Then quit using black bodies as tour guides or the site for your authentic African experience. Are we not tired of dancing for you, gyrating and singing on cue? Are we not tired of gathering as a mass of blackness to atone for just being here, to beg God to save us from a war we never started, to march for a cause caused by the intolerance for our existence? We raise our hands so we do not get shot. raise our hands in church to pray for protection, and we still get shot there too with our hands raised. Invasion comes so naturally for your people. So you have come to rob us of our places of worship too. You have come to murder us in prisons too. That is not new either. I think there's too many white people out here acting God. Too many white people out here doing the work of God. And this God of theirs has my tummy in knots. Him and I, we've always had a complicated relationship. This blonde hair and blue-eyed Jesus of my Sunday school has had my kind bowing to a white and patriarchal heaven, bowing to a Christ, his son, and 12 disciples. For all we know, the disciples could have been queer, the Holy Trinity some weird twisted love triangle, and the Holy Ghost transgendered. But you will only choose to understand the scriptures that suit your agenda. You have taken the liberty to colonize the concept of God, gave God a gender, a skin color, and a name in a language we had to twist our mouths around. Blasphemy is wrapping slavery in the gospel and calling it freedom. Blasphemy is having to watch my kind use the same gospel to enslave each other. Since the days of Elijah, we have been engineered to kneel to whiteness, and we're not even sure if the days of Elijah even existed, because whoever wrote the Bible did not include us. But I would rather exist in that godless holy book than in the history books that did not tell the truth about us, for us, on behalf of us. And if you really had to write our stories, then you ought to have done it in our mother's tongues, the ones you cut off when you fed them a new language. We never consent, yet we are asked to dine with the oppressors and serve them forgiveness. How? When the only ingredients I have are grief and rage. Another one who looks like me died today. Another one who looks like me was murdered today. And may that be the conversation at the table, and we can all thereafter wash this bitter meal with amnesia and go for a swim after that, just for fun.
One almost needs a minute of silence after hearing your pieces. And even though I didn't grow up in South Africa, and especially because I'm now nearing middle age, and as a woman, I just feel humbled. I feel humbled by listening to the stories that you have to tell, and I'm grateful that you are telling them. I've only read the 3 winning entries, but Nick here had the pleasure and honor of reading them all. And I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit more about your co-judges? There was a panel of 4, and about the process. What was the mood of the competition? What was it like to engage with these stories?
From the beginning of the judging, I think there was a great deal of excitement. The 4 judges were myself, Masanden Shanga, Panashe Chugumadzi, and Gabeba Barurun, with Gabeba being the chair of the judging panel. And from the beginning, we just kind of was very laissez-faire. We just went, we have all the entries, let's read them all, and we'll reconvene in a couple weeks. And this is the first time I've actually been judging a competition. I'm usually the person being judged, which it's a very strange reversal. And essentially, although we didn't really try to do this, we all kind of took up different roles. So one judge would look at the emotional content, one would kind of look at the intangibles, and I busied myself by looking at the real sort of technicality of what was being written. Because there was an assumption, and it bore out, that everything that the students would be writing about was valid, was emotionally charged, was opinions and arguments that needed to be aired. But it's also a writing prize, so there's the tension between speaking truth to power and speaking what needs to be said, and also a technical writing excellence. And the mood throughout was very supportive. We were extremely excited, and the quality of the winners bears this out. And to sort of paraphrase Linton Kwesi Johnson, I mean, it's the kind of work that we're going through was a burning black story of rage and disappointment and listlessness and many of the things that all students go through. When you're fully becoming an adult, you're also getting into creative writing, you're working in this era of quite complicated politics. It's not to say that all the work was good, far from it. I think that a lot of the entries showed that writing is not being encouraged in, the teaching of writing is not being encouraged in all departments. And that isn't a matter of English proficiency, it's more of the understanding of an architecture of what makes an argument cogent or persuasive. But it also does show that there's a lot of talent within the student body of South Africa, no matter what they're studying.
You have mentioned one of the most important, I think, aspects that feature in all the three pieces, and I assume that it featured quite a lot in most of the entries, and that is anger and rage.
The moment in time that this was written, and not to say that that the anger itself has changed, the feeling of it has, the activity, of it has changed. But the moment that this is speaking about, which was last year during Roads Must Fall and Fees Must Fall, was really like a blister bursting, I felt. And there was so much. I mean, for instance, during Roads Must Fall, when Azania House was occupied, when the Bremner building was occupied, it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal, the feelings of rage and solidarity that were coming out from a generation that felt entirely let down by a notion of a country and citizenship and ownership of a space, and just the ability to exist in a space. And that space was particularly angry, particularly aggressive, but it honestly felt like boot camp. It felt like emotional and political boot camp. And I think out of there stepped phenomenal people who had not been given, but had taken their own chance to verbalize their rage, to contextualize it, to create discourse around it, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. And to step out into the context that is South Africa right now, fully aware of themselves and fully aware of how to articulate that rage. And that's so important, because I think we've had so much rage, but the ability to articulate it, the ability to turn around and cause something with it, rather than it being something that is internalized and eats you, is amazing. And I think that's right now what a lot of the youth is doing, and I think it's phenomenal.
I think it's interesting that rage and anger are things that are, for one, have kind of been read into both our pieces, and the thing that you're asking, how it informs, our creative processes. For one, I think personally, it's annoying how the world and society is always asking of us to be in rage, even when we're not, to be in this constant state of anger, and how the things that we produce and create, even when it is, I don't know, a love letter or like a vomit or something, will be read as rage or anger. And that's interesting. And I think for me, anger and rage are concepts or terms or emotions that are, it depends from what perspective you're asking from, and how it is that you're hearing the work and how it is that you're reading the work. Because I could hear your poem as a joy poem. It makes me so happy. You know, it makes me want to twerk and stuff, you know. And someone else might hear your poem and find it to be about rage, you know. And I think my poem might be about love and it makes me want to go home and have lots of wine and have sex. I don't know, whatever. But it's interesting how that, and I think it's got to do with there's a lot of shit flying around in South Africa right now. Like literally, it's a sewage pipe, South Africa at the moment. And so whatever it is that we put out or produce as young people, particularly as young black people, is going to be read as rage, is going to be read as anger, and I find that interesting.
Do you feel that things being characterized as rage or anger is a dismissive tactic?
Go for it, my friend.
I think it's indicative of who it is that's hearing it. I think that a lot of the time, if you're hearing it defensively and you read it, and you'll internalize it as rage, because there's something about an affront, there's something about potentially a whiteness or a privilege or a something that feels like it's being attacked, so therefore it must be coming at you with anger. And I also think, I agree with Koleka, I think there's a very easy historical scapegoat with black women, sort of black woman with and it's with women, and then there's black woman. Yeah. So to say that if there is an opinion, if there is a bit too much feeling, it must be coming at me, and it must be dangerous, you know. And I think that's institutionalized. I think that's what I said. I think loud black young woman just kind of quick time translate into aggressive, where it's so much more intricate than that, and the humanness of it, I think, often is lost. The sort of layers of experience, I think, are often lost, because it's a blanket term. It's a very one-dimensional color, rage, sometimes.
Also, I feel like it's easier to deal with anger or rage. It's like you're angry, you're naughty, you're causing trouble, go sit in a corner. Or the youth are angry, they're raging, they're burning things, stop it, you know. And it's an easy thing to kind of not punish, but it's an easy emotion or term or concept to kind of dismiss or to deal with and to kind of put a wall up against, rather than to figure out like, okay, so what are you actually talking about? What are you actually expressing? And then let me deal with that, or let me react to the thing that you're actually writing about or expressing or putting out there.
The other thing that struck me on a very personal level is the way you talk about in both your poems about language. I also write in a language that is not my mother tongue, and I always found it quite liberating. It has only ever been a positive experience for me, and I feel that it is much more complicated when you write in English. Could you talk about how it feels to write in English for you?
I mean, I guess it feels fine. I've only ever written in English.
Mm-hmm.
It feels normal, I guess. It doesn't feel special. It doesn't feel. I feel like. I mean, I think right now where I'm at in my life, in a lot of ways, I'm playing catch up to isiXhosa, which is my mother tongue, and trying to catch up to like learning the language, and how that has been lost along the way is no fault of my own, really. I don't take responsibility for that. but I do take responsibility for what I do about that right now. But writing in English is normal right now because it's all I've ever done. It's all I've been asked to do. So it doesn't feel strange. It doesn't feel like privilege or anything, I guess.
For me, I don't have another one to write in. So my commentary is more, my mothers are both they're very pedantic about language, and they're very pedantic about English, and they were very, from the time I was very young, that is my mother tongue. And the thing is, and what I started realizing quite a while ago was that I was allowed a freedom of expression in my mother tongue that was not afforded to nearly anyone else. I was afforded the ability to find poetry and to have people accept it and critique it and really work at it, and the structures have been put in place for that. The structures for me to find poetry in my mother tongue, to find and not that there isn't in others, but the fact that it has been given so much time has always struck me as a completely unfair thing. So I love my language, I truly do, and because of that, because I love my language so much, I am deeply aware of the inequality of what my language has offered me practically and what it has offered me artistically, even the ability to be in print, the ability to be in print and to be distributed theoretically. Is not something that's afforded to the majority of this country, and that's a huge problem for me. You know, I speak the colonizer's language. That's my mother tongue. I speak the colonizer's language, and the indigenous languages of this country have no structures that back them up. So that's a problem for me personally.
In general terms, what has the competition offered the two of you? What was your reason to enter? And then Nick, could you tell what it offered to you?
So to have a competition that said, like, talk about this and really, like, talk about it anyhow you want was something that was quite attractive.
Oh, and here was I thinking it was all about the nice judges that were going to judge the pieces.
Obviously, on the
Shame. It was actually quite great for me because first it's a wonderful thing to be asked to judge a prize, but also because I'm a student, I'm a postgraduate student, and it naturally meant a lot to me to try and, the lack of censorship, the lack of sort of barrier to content and expression, relative to many other competitions. It presented a nice opportunity for me to kind of take the pulse of what my fellow students were thinking, and whether what I was experiencing, what I was thinking was matching up to, even in the slightest way, with other students. So it was selfish in some respects, but I think we're allowed to be selfish a lot of the time. And also just to be sort of exposed to some really good writing. I mean, it's nice to read new stuff. I mean, that's kind of what I really like to do in my publishing. And it's just, it's nice.
I would like to know about this. The two of you have a project now coming up. How did this come about?
Yeah, so my poetry publishing company, Lange, is publishing Koleka's debut collection next year.
Did you discover each other through the competition?
No,
or
I'd known about her before, but it just kind of cemented, the good feeling, the good ideas, and the sort of perception that I had. And it presents, these sorts of things present nice opportunities for collaboration. And I agree wholeheartedly about the cash prize. I do not enter anything if it does not have a prize that's worth my time anymore. It's because your work is valuable and it deserves to be rewarded. And there are a lot of people who are like, oh, you only have cash prizes. It's like, man, this is a very low-paid career if you choose to make it your career.
Yeah, most people don't realize it, but writers also need to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get just free wine all the time. but yeah, that's essentially it.
Both of you now mentioned something that I find incredibly important about this competition, and I'm going to quote you, Koleka. You said about this poem that it has radicalized the way I think about the role and power of the spoken word. It has taught me a great deal about holding onto your convictions, truth, even when it scares you, and others for that matter. It addresses the huge issue of when you go out there and present your work and find an audience, there is quite a lot of fear involved. How do you deal with that fear as a writer or a performer?
I guess my first response is always to say fuck it. Because I kind of write the things that I want to read, and I kind of write for, I write for myself, I write to see myself, I write so that I can navigate the world as a more lighter human being. So the audience is not something that I bear in mind quite a lot. So whenever fear is encountered or whenever the audience's response is encountered, it was never about you anyway, but it's nice that you respond or that you engage with the work. But it's more for me and people who look like me and people who sound like me and people who navigate the world in similar ways that I do. I think are at the center of why I write and why I share work in the first place. So, yeah.
I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Please do share your findings. We have a few minutes for questions from the audience. Please raise your voices and ask these wonderful people whatever you wish to know about the competition or their own work or their own lives.
I haven't considered it. But people have asked if they can translate this poem into German, into Xhosa, into all sorts of languages that I can't read or understand. But I don't know, my friend. I don't know. Because as soon as you translate anything, there are nuances that were there before that kind of get lost in the process of trying to convey what you were saying in this particular language in another language. And if I wanted to do that, and I'd have to know why. And at the moment, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to say I don't know. Ask is.
But I was just wondering from you guys,
Yeah, no, that thing is very serious. Like, currently, we have a poet laureate, okay, and half of the country, A, does not even know what that is, B, doesn't even know what that entails, C, doesn't even know who that is. And yeah, like, yes, they play a part, like, if you are in the spoken word scene, you'll kind of know about the people that you've just mentioned, but if you're not, you won't. And also, like, coming out of high school, they were kind of like, we were forced to read them. But it's an interesting thing because as someone, okay, so I think there are two parts to this question. So as someone who is in the poetry industry, who works in the poetry industry and navigates the poetry industry, it's interesting to see how these particular people are not so active anymore. Ooh, let me put active in this because I might get shot. And how there are other people kind of, there are poets in the room giving me eyes. And how there are other people, okay, I'm trying to edit as I go, but not really. And how there are other people who are kind of becoming the Jameses of our generation. And I think for me, right now, I'm really enjoying a Joburg-based poet called Vuyelwa Maluleki, who's just incredible in a lot of ways. I think I'm really enjoying her work.
I feel like I'm one of those people that Koleka just spoke about. No, not those, the ones that don't know enough. I feel like right now my inspirations of things are very internal, and I think that right now my life is very internalized, and that has to do with a whole lot of different factors. And I think that that's right for me right now. And I think that needs to solidify and that needs to find shape, and I need to find a voice that sits in me in a real way. Not that influences are not important, but poets aren't where I'm looking at for that, you know. I'm reading a lot and I'm watching a lot of films, I'm watching theatre, I'm trying to do things, but yeah, I can't point to a poet right now. I'm sorry. No, but it's also a bit of a, I really like her. I think she's pretty cool, but I've known her for a while, but I think she's great, honestly.
If I may, one of the wonderful things about festivals and being asked to chair a session like this is the discovery of poets like you. And also, Nick is also a poet himself and a publisher of poetry, and every single collection that he has published has been absolutely eye-opening and mind-blowing. So there is space growing for poetry in the country. And what I love about opportunities like this, and I'm also grateful to PEN South Africa for allowing me to chair this, is that one discovers new voices. And I'll be stalking you forever. and I can't wait to hear more and to read more, and it's a wonderful opportunity. And I can only ask you to go out there and Google or look up PEN South Africa's website. They have all the winning entries. They have wonderful Q&As with the authors. So it's really a great space to explore South African writing. Vibrant, great, inspiring, thank you. And I was told to inform you that also PEN South Africa is doing a workshop surrounding the Feast Must Fall movement, but the date is not set yet. But if you go to the website, you will find all the information required soon, hopefully. Thank you for coming, for sharing in this very special moment. Good night.